My name is Rachel Miller. I'm 24 years old, and if you had told me a year ago that my own family would toss me out like yesterday's garbage, I would have laughed. Families fight, sure. Parents yell, siblings argue, and doors slam. That's normal. But this was different. This wasn't about a single argument. This was about them deciding, as a unit, that I didn't belong anymore. It started on a Thursday night, just after dinner. The smell of meatloaf still lingered in the air when my dad, Greg, pushed his chair back. His plate wasn't even empty, but he had already decided the meal was over. My mom, Linda, stayed quiet, clearing dishes like it was any other evening. My brother, Mark, scrolled through his phone, pretending not to notice the way the room felt heavier than usual. Then Dad stood, walked out of the kitchen, and came back with my suitcase. My suitcase. It was the same faded blue one I had taken to college, the one with a small tear on the side that I had promised myself I'd fix. I recognized the sticker I had put on it years ago, Dream Big. That suitcase was filled with my clothes, my books, my life, shoved together in a rush, without care. Rachel, Dad said flatly, like he was reading off a grocery list, you can't stay here anymore. I blinked. For a moment, I thought maybe he was joking. Maybe this was some messed up way of teaching me a lesson. But then he set the suitcase by the door and opened it wide. My chest tightened. Dad, what do you mean? Where am I supposed to go? He didn't even look at me. That's not my problem. Mom's hands froze on a dish. She didn't say a word, but her shoulders stiffened like she wanted to speak. She didn't. She just kept washing, like the sound of running water could drown out what was happening. I turned to Mark, my brother. Say something. You can't just let this happen. He shrugged, his eyes glued to his phone. You're 24, Rachel. Time to grow up. You've been dragging this family down for long enough. His words cut deeper than Dad's. Growing up, Mark and I used to sneak cookies after bedtime, whisper secrets under blankets, and laugh until our stomachs hurt. Now he was looking at me like I was nothing more than dead weight. The room blurred as tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall, not in front of them. Dragging you down? I've been working 2 jobs just to help pay bills around here. My voice cracked. How can you even say that? Dad snapped, his tone sharp enough to slice the air. Quit faking it, Rachel. Acting like you're some kind of martyr. You've done nothing but disappoint us. Those words, quit faking it, stuck like glass in my throat. Because the truth was, I wasn't faking. I was drowning, and they refused to see it. I stumbled toward the door, reaching for my suitcase, my legs trembling beneath me. The house that had once been my safe place now felt like a stranger's home, each wall echoing with rejection. When I stepped onto the porch, the cold night air slapped my face. It was early spring, but the wind still carried winter's bite. I pulled my thin sweater tighter around me, but it wasn't enough. Nothing felt like enough. I looked back through the glass window of the door. Mom stood in the kitchen, her hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. For a moment, our eyes met. I waited for her to open the door, to say, "Come back inside, honey. We'll figure this out." But she didn't move. She just turned away, disappearing deeper into the house. That was worse than Dad's anger. Her silence screamed louder than his words. The porch light buzzed overhead, attracting moths that threw tiny shadows across the wooden steps. I sat on the top stair, my suitcase beside me, and buried my face in my hands. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was humiliated. Neighbors' houses lined the street. A few porch lights were on. Curtains twitched. Someone was watching. I felt their eyes, their quiet curiosity. I wondered what they were thinking. The Millers threw her out. Guess she finally messed up. I wanted to vanish. The suitcase was heavy, but I opened it, searching for something to hold on to. Inside were my jeans, a stack of t-shirts, a photo frame of me and Mom at the county fair when I was 12, and the stuffed bear I had once tucked under my pillow for comfort. Seeing it now, tossed in like an afterthought, broke something inside me. The photo frame slipped from my hands and cracked against the porch. The glass shattered, pieces scattering across the wood like sharp reminders of what was gone. I pulled my knees to my chest, hugging them tight. My breath came in short gasps, the same way it had when I used to get panic attacks in high school. Back then, Mom would rub my back and whisper, "It's okay, baby. Breathe with me." But now, she had walked away. The cold settled deeper into my bones, and for the first time, I wondered if I even existed to them anymore. Still, somewhere inside, a spark refused to die. I wiped my face, straightened my shoulders, and whispered to myself, "I won't beg. Not this time." Because here's the thing, they thought they had the power by shutting me out. But they didn't know what I was holding back, what I had kept secret even from them. And someday, they were going to find out. That night on the porch, I wasn't just a daughter thrown away. I was a storm waiting quietly on the horizon. That night, sitting on the porch with my suitcase, I felt like the world had ended. But the strange thing about endings is how quiet they can be. No thunder, no sirens, no grand announcement. Just the creak of the wooden steps beneath me, the hum of the porch light, and my own breath fogging in the cold. Eventually, I couldn't sit there anymore. Staying meant someone might see me, might ask questions I couldn't answer. So I stood, dragging my suitcase down the steps. Its tiny wheels clattered against the wood, echoing louder than I wanted. Every sound made me feel exposed, like even the shadows were judging me. The street was empty, save for a car or two parked along the curb. I started walking, no plan in my head. Just away. Away from the house, away from the weight pressing on my chest. Each step was harder than the last. The suitcase was heavier than it had ever been, or maybe my body was weaker than I wanted to admit. I thought about calling a friend, but then I remembered most of my friends were gone. Some had moved states for jobs, some had drifted after college, and the few I still talked to, I couldn't bring myself to dial their number and say, "Hey, my family threw me out. Can I sleep on your couch?" The sidewalks were cracked and uneven. Every few steps, the suitcase caught on a ridge, jerking my arm. I kept walking anyway, because what else could I do? The further I went, the more the neighborhood shifted. The neat lawns and trimmed hedges gave way to weedy patches and peeling paint. Houses grew farther apart. Streetlights became dimmer. I told myself I'd head to the bus stop, though I had no destination. The idea of sitting under that flickering light, waiting for a bus I couldn't even afford, was pathetic. But at least it would give me somewhere to sit that wasn't my parents' porch. Halfway there, I stopped under an oak tree, my breath coming in sharp bursts. The panic attack I had been holding back all evening broke through. My chest tightened. My hands trembled. I gripped the suitcase handle so hard my knuckles turned white. "Breathe, Rachel," I whispered to myself. "You've done this before. You can do it again." I counted. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Over and over. My vision steadied. My body didn't. My legs shook like they didn't belong to me. I slid down against the tree trunk, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to disappear. I thought about Mom. She had looked at me through the window, her eyes screaming something she didn't dare say. Maybe she wanted to stop me. Maybe she wanted to fight for me. But she hadn't. That silence haunted me more than Dad's cruel words. Silence could be worse than violence. It left you with questions that gnawed at your soul. After a while, a noise pulled me back, the crunch of gravel. I tensed, heart racing. A man walked his dog across the street, giving me a glance before moving on. His eyes lingered just long enough to make me feel small, like I was a problem he was relieved not to have. I hugged myself tighter. By the time I reached the bus stop, my body felt hollow. The plastic bench was cold and sticky, the kind that clung to your skin. The street light above flickered, buzzing like an angry wasp. I stared at the schedule posted on the pole, though the words blurred together. I had $20 in my wallet. That was it. $20 and whatever coins rattled at the bottom of my bag. Enough for maybe a meal and a one-way ticket out of town. But where would I go? I thought about my aunt, Susan. She lived 2 towns over, in a small bungalow with faded green shutters. She wasn't the warm, hug-you-tight kind of aunt, but she had always been bluntly honest. Once, when I was 14, she told me, "Rachel, your parents don't always see you for who you are. Don't let them convince you their vision is the only truth." At the time, I hadn't understood. Now, her words played like a warning I had ignored. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over her name in my contacts. It had been months since we spoke. What if she didn't pick up? What if she told me to figure it out myself? My chest tightened again. I locked the screen and shoved the phone back in my pocket. Instead, I sat there, listening to the sound of passing cars. Each wish felt like the world moving on without me. I thought of everyone asleep in warm beds, safe under their roofs, while I sat in the open, exposed. That's when it hit me. I was officially on my own. No home to go back to, no bed waiting, no one coming to check if I was okay. The realization was brutal, but in a strange way, it was also freeing. If no one was going to save me, then I had to save myself. I stood, gripping the handle of my suitcase tighter, and whispered to the night, "This isn't where I end." And even though my voice shook, I believed it. Just a little. Enough to take another step forward into the unknown. Because they thought throwing me out meant I'd crumble. But what they didn't realize was this. Being tossed away doesn't make you worthless. Sometimes it makes you dangerous. That night didn't just strip me of a home. It planted a seed. Small, raw, but alive. And I knew one day that seed would grow into something they couldn't ignore. The night air clung to my skin as I walked, suitcase dragging behind me like a stubborn child. My legs ached, but I couldn't stop moving. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant collapsing. A few blocks down, I slowed near an old brick building with ivy crawling up its side. To anyone else, it was just another aging apartment complex. To me, it was something different, a secret I'd guarded since college. Back then, when I was 19, my Aunt Susan had pulled me aside after a family barbecue. She pressed a set of keys into my palm. "In case you ever need it," she whispered, her tone sharp but protective. The keys belonged to a tiny one-room unit in this very building, one she'd kept after her divorce, never renting out, never mentioning to anyone else. At the time, I didn't understand why she thought I'd ever need such a thing. I had a home, a family, or so I thought. But now, standing in front of the building years later, the keys banged like a lifeline in my pocket. I paused at the entrance, staring up at the flickering hallway light behind the glass door. My heart hammered. What if the keys didn't work anymore? What if someone else lived there now? My fingers shook as I slid the metal key into the lock. Click! The sound nearly made me cry. I pushed the door open, the smell of old wooden faint mildew greeting me like an old, flawed friend. The hallway was narrow, lined with mailboxes dented from years of use. My suitcase wheels scraped against the linoleum as I pulled it behind me. When I reached the unit, my breath caught. The door looked the same, faded blue paint, a brass number nailed crookedly above the peephole. I slipped the second key in. Another click, another miracle. The door groaned open, and I stepped inside. The apartment was exactly as Susan had left it, bare, dusty, but intact. A single window overlooked the street. A twin bed frame sat against one wall, the mattress still covered in plastic. The air was stale, but safe. Safer than anywhere else I could think of. I dropped my suitcase and sat on the bed. The plastic crinkled under my weight. For the first time that night, I let out a shaky laugh. Not because it was funny, nothing about this was funny, but because relief sometimes comes out wrong. I ran my hand over the wall, feeling the bumps of the old paint. This tiny room, forgotten by everyone but me and Susan, had just become my world. But the relief didn't last. Reality crept back in. I had $20 to my name. No job that paid enough. No plan. A room wasn't a life. It was just a shell. I pulled out my phone and stared at Susan's number again. I wanted to call her, to tell her I was here. But pride stopped me. I didn't want her to hear me broken, begging. I wanted her to see me stand on my own first. The fridge hummed in the corner when I plugged it in. Empty, of course. I opened my suitcase, pulling out clothes and stacking them on the shelf. Each piece felt heavier than it should, as if fabric could carry shame. Lying back on the stiff mattress, I stayed at the ceiling. The sound of distant traffic floated through the thin window. Somewhere below, a couple argued, their voices muffled but sharp. Life went on around me. Mine had been paused. But in that pause, something stayed. I remembered the look on Dad's face as he tossed my suitcase. The way he sneered, "Quit faking it." The way Mom turned her eyes away. That memory didn't crush me anymore. It fueled me. I whispered into the empty room, "They think I'm weak. They'll see." The next morning, I woke to sunlight leaking through the blinds, dust dancing in the beam. My throat was dry, my stomach hollow, hunger gnawed, sharp and constant. I counted the bills in my wallet again, willing them to multiply. They didn't. I decided to stretch it as far as I could. 1 meal a day. Cheap coffee for energy. No luxuries. Survival mode. I walked to the corner store, bought a loaf of bread, peanut butter, and a pack of instant noodles. The cashier, a tired-looking man with a name tag that read Derek, barely glanced at me. That anonymity felt like a gift. Back in the apartment, I ate in silence, the taste of peanut butter thick and dry in my mouth. Each bite was a reminder, this was rock bottom. But as I cleaned the spoon and tucked it carefully back in the drawer, I realized something important. Rock bottom wasn't the end. It was the foundation. And foundations were meant to be built on. That night, lying on the mattress again, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I planned. I thought about my skills, about the odd jobs I'd done for neighbors, the part-time work at the library, the freelance designs I'd once uploaded online. None of it seemed like much, but maybe it was a start. The seed planted the night they threw me out, it was growing. Slowly, stubbornly, in the cracks of this dusty old apartment. And as the moonlight painted stripes across the floor, I made myself a promise. This secret apartment wouldn't just be a hiding place. It would be the place where I rebuilt myself. Where silence turned into strength. Where dismissal turned into determination. And where the girl they called a fake became someone they couldn't dismiss again. The days in that dusty little apartment began blending together, but something inside me was changing. I no longer woke up with panic clawing at my chest. Instead, I woke up with purpose. Small at first, fragile even, but it was there. Each morning, I set myself a routine. Get up, wash my face in the tiny bathroom sink, make a cup of instant coffee, and sit at the rickety desk by the window. The desk wasn't really mine. It had probably been left behind by some previous tenant, but it became my command center. On it, I spread out my old laptop, the same one I'd used for college classes before things fell apart. The screen flickered, the battery barely held charge, but it worked. And with it, I started piecing myself back together. I remembered the freelance projects I used to take, logo designs, simple websites, flyers for local shops. Nothing glamorous, but work I could do with focus and creativity. I reopened those old accounts, brushing away digital dust. The first night, I stayed up past midnight reworking my profile, updating samples, and writing proposals. It wasn't much, but it was something. By the end of the week, I landed a small gig, $50 for designing a bakery's new menu. I almost cried when I saw the payment come through. $50 wasn't going to solve my problems, but it wasn't about the money. It was proof. Proof that I could stand on my own, even in this broken-down apartment. That night, I sat with my peanut butter sandwich, the same food that had become both my comfort and my curse, and whispered, "This is how it begins." But work wasn't the only shift happening. Inside me, the anger that had burned hot the night I was thrown out began to cool, not into forgiveness, but into something sharper. Focus. Every time I pictured my dad's face, twisted with contempt, I felt that fire steady. It wasn't going to burn me anymore. It was going to fuel me. The walls of the apartment became my witnesses. I taped notes to them, goals, deadlines, ideas. Save $500. Buy better laptop. Never go back begging. Each note was a promise. Still, survival wasn't easy. Some nights, the hunger gnawed so deep I wanted to give up. Some mornings, I woke to the sound of other tenants arguing in the hallway and felt the weight of my loneliness pressing down. But then, one evening, I received an email that shifted everything. A small business owner named Mrs. Grant, a local florist, needed a full rebrand. It was a big job, bigger than anything I'd taken before. I stared at the email for an hour, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, before finally typing, "Yes, I can do this." The work consumed me. For weeks, I lived in that project, sketching logos on scrap paper, coloring mock-ups, rewriting taglines until they sang. Mrs. Grant's approval with each step felt like water in a desert. When the final payment came through, over $400, I sat in stunned silence, staring at the number on my screen. $400. In this apartment that felt like a fortune. I went to the store and, for the first time in months, allowed myself something more than bare essentials. Fresh fruit, real coffee, a second-hand blanket to keep warm at night. Each purchase wasn't just comfort, it was proof that I was clawing my way back. And with every small victory, I felt the balance between me and my family shift. They thought they had the power when they shoved me out, suitcase in hand. But here I was, building something they knew nothing about. Quietly, patiently, the turning point came one Sunday afternoon. I was walking back from the store, arms full of groceries, when I spotted my father's car parked across the street. For a split second, panic fled. Did he know I was here? Was he watching me? But then I saw it differently. He didn't know. He had no idea where I was or what I was doing. And that was power. For years, he had monitored my every step, criticized my choices, doubted my abilities, dismissed my struggles. But now, for the first time, he didn't know a thing about my life. He had no control. I walked past the car, head high, groceries cutting into my arms, but pride carrying me taller than I'd felt in months. Back inside the apartment, I set the food on the counter and smiled to myself. The shift wasn't dramatic. Not yet. I wasn't rich. I wasn't fully healed. But the power had started to tilt. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding. And every step I took in this secret apartment was one step closer to the day they would see me, not as the weak, faking daughter they threw out, but as the woman who rose stronger without them. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered into the silence, "They'll regret underestimating me." And for the first time since everything fell apart, I believed it. 6 months passed like a blur, yet every single day etched itself into me like a mark I couldn't erase. The little apartment that had once felt like exile now felt like armor, a sanctuary I had built with my own hands. The peeling paint, the humming pipes, the uneven floor, it was all mine. And within those walls, I had rebuilt myself from scraps, dollar by dollar, design by design. By then, I wasn't just scraping by. I had clients, steady ones. I had savings, enough to feel the ground beneath me was solid. My laptop was upgraded. My fridge had food, and for the first time in forever, my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror didn't look like a girl begging for approval. It looked like a woman who had learned to stand. And then, just when the quiet balance of my life seemed secure, came the knock. It was late afternoon. Rain tapped softly against the windows, and I was finishing revisions for a client when the sound echoed through the narrow hallway. 3 sharp knocks. Firm. 2 familiar. My heart froze. I stood, hesitant, my pulse quickening. Hardly anyone visited me here. My neighbors kept to themselves. Friends, I didn't really have any left. That left only one possibility. I opened the door, and there they were. My parents. My mother's eyes, once so sharp with disdain, now rimmed with exhaustion. My father, the man who had told me to leave as if I were trash on his doorstep, now looked older, thinner, defeated. Behind them, the storm raged, their umbrellas dripping, their clothes clinging to their bodies. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Clara, my mother whispered, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard. We need your help. My stomach twisted. Her words, so simple, so human, yet loaded with everything they had once denied me. Help? I asked, my voice steady, though inside I was shaking. You mean the same kind of help I begged for when you threw me out? The kind you laughed off when you said I was faking it? My father stepped forward, his pride visibly cracking. Things have changed. The house, the bills. I lost my job. We don't have anywhere else to turn. The irony hit me like a wave. They had tossed me aside when I needed them most. And now, drenched in rain, desperation clinging to their every word, they stood at my door. I almost laughed. But it wasn't joy. It was the sound of a truth so bitter it nearly choked me. I lived on peanut butter sandwiches for months, I said slowly, my voice low but cutting. I begged for your love, your acceptance, and you gave me conditions. You shoved me out as if I were disposable. Tears welled in my mother's eyes. She reached out, her hand trembling. We didn't know. We didn't realize how strong you. Stop. My voice cracked like a whip. You didn't want to know. You didn't care. And now that you're the ones with nowhere to go, suddenly I matter? Suddenly, I belong. The silence stretched. My father's jaw tightened, but even he couldn't find words to defend what they'd done. Behind me, my apartment was warm, the smell of fresh coffee lingering in the air, my laptop glowing with proof of the life I had built. Behind them, the rain poured harder, the storm swallowing them in its relentless downpour. And in that moment, I realized something. The power had shifted entirely. I wasn't the weak, discarded gal standing on their doorstep, begging to be let back in. I was the woman inside, deciding whether they deserved to enter mine. I took a deep breath, my decision already carved into me. You taught me one thing when you threw me out, I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. That love, to you, was conditional. And I promised myself I would never beg for it again. So I'm not going to start now. My mother's sob broke through the rain. My father opened his mouth, but nothing came. I placed my hand on the doorframe, steady, unshaken. You wanted me gone. Consider this the moment you got exactly what you asked for. And with that, I closed the door, slowly, firmly. The sound of it shutting echoed louder than the storm outside. My chest rose and fell, my body trembling, but not from fear, from freedom. For the first time, I wasn't trapped by their rejection. I had chosen my own ending. I leaned back against the door, listening to the muffled storm fade as their footsteps retreated. And I whispered into the silence, a vow only I could hear. They dismissed my breath, but I rebuilt it into a voice strong enough to silence theirs. And that was the night I knew I had finally won.